Hi, I'm BJ, and this is the Arcane Alienist Podcast.
Hey everybody, how you doing out there? Okay, we are ready for another installment of my Black Sword Hack solo play with Dolen, the Ulver, or Dolen of the Ulver Isles. Um, Last time we left him, he had been investigating the death of his brother, and uh, people were dying of an illness in the slums that his brother had contracted. He's not sure how they're contracting it. It doesn't seem to go from person to person, but people are getting sick. Uh, After kind of spending some time in the slums and finding out more information, he's decided to go speak to the Morticians Guild in the city. He learned that that's where a lot of the people, particularly poor people, when they die and no one can afford to bury them, the Morticians Guild will actually see to their burial. And so he's going to go see if he can find anything that they might know, any information they might have about the this illness that helps solve the mystery. So again, we're using an oracle, or I have used an oracle to play through this part, and I'll explain what's going on that way, just through the dice rolls and how this unfolded with the solo role play, and then we'll do a narrative part again. So here we go. So what we had found out last time, what happens to the dead? They go to paupers' graves collected by the Morticians Guild. So that afternoon, Dolan continues to the morgue. So I'm in the morgue, explain that I represent the house, Fuyando, and I have questions about some of the illness and deaths in the vicinity of our warehouse. Two of our house guards have taken ill. Um, I just assume they're going to be somewhat cooperative. Whoever I'm meeting with is going to be cooperative, given who I am and that I work for a wealthy merchant house here in the city. Uh, and the reason I settled on a guild is I'm kind of thinking of this is sort of the league of merchant cities. Everything's going to go through a guild. Commerce rolls everything, right? So there's going to be a guild in there with their hands and everything, right? So is the person I speak to the warlock? Remember when we started this adventure, I figured there's some kind of black magic or something going on, a warlock affiliated with chaos or something going on here. And the oracle says, hell yes. Um, so Dolan doesn't know that again, but I know it and you know it. Uh, I tell him the illness has baffled our physician. He can slow its progress, but not stop it. It appears to be spreading in the slums, and I assume the poor are brought here. He asks what answers he can provide. I said, they're dead. He sees their remains. I'm sorry, I ask what answers he can provide. They're dead. He sees their remains. I say he, the guild. Um, they don't really keep up with the causes. They just bury them. They're not physicians, right? Uh, it seems that he's at least. I asked if he's noticed any patterns. Um, uh, no, he says, but can I? Does it seem to me, knowing as the game master that this is the villain, can Dolan tell that he's being dodgy? So I make a wisdom check and fail. But of course, I know I fail. The player would know I would fail, so I'm not metagaming here. A player would know they failed that wisdom check. So I'll call on Doom again. So that's my second call on Doom. I don't have a Doom die left, so everything else I do from now on will be at disadvantage. Um, so I apologize and ask that if he reports anything to me at the house, if he thinks something is going on or if he learns anything else, and I give him 5 silver coins and say there'll be more if he discovers anything useful. Okay. So Dolan tells, because if you my Doom can tell he's being dodgy. So I need to know, does he detect that I'm on to him? So I have to make a charisma check with the disadvantage. I roll a 9 and a 16, so that's a failure with the 9, meaning I don't really, you know, I know he's up to something, but I'm not able enough to hide the fact that I'm kind of on to something's going on here. Uh, will he move against me before I get home? Again, Dolan doesn't know that. The Oracle tells BJ, no, it won't. Uh, Dolan is obviously tired. He's done a lot enough. He needs to go back and resupply and think. So the day ends with him going home, very suspicious of this mortician. He wants to follow him. He's not really good at subterfuge, right? I mean, he's good at social subterfuge and stuff like that, but he's not really good at actually sneaking around. So he says to himself, I need a thief. Well, guess what? We started off this adventure with him meeting a thief. So the next day, Dolan goes back to the beach and looks around. Any chance that he can find the pickpocket? Um, normally you roll a d6 on the oracle. I rolled a 2d6 with the odds against, and just to decrease the opportunity that you're not going to find a thief just standing out in the open when they're going to keep a low profile. So no, no, hell no, he doesn't find him. So I start to ask around, and I tell this story. I just came into port. Uh, I'm looking for my niece. I describe her to describe the thief. Anyone around fits that description, and I'm not subtle, but I about asking about her, but I do try to appear as though I'm telling the truth and being earnest about this. A charisma check of 4 tells me yes, that works. People are helpful as they can be. Does the strategy pay off? The oracle says yes. Who finds? So I wonder who finds who. Does she hear someone is asking for her? The oracle says yes. So I'm just going to conclude there. I don't find her directly. She's probably going to sneak up on me. So my niece slips up behind me with a knife in the back. That's what I'm up to. And I tell her we, parted on good terms, you know, previously, and now I'd like to hire a thief for some work. I don't know anyone in the guild. I figured she could be my way in. She could do it herself, or she could get the credit for bringing in a job. It's up to her. She says she can do the job, and the reason I did that instead of rolling the oracle, I just said that because I think here's a good way to create an NPC, a permanent contact for Dolan. She goes by the name Thorn, and we'll just say that all guild members have an alias, even among their no, they don't even know. Very few of them even know each other's names. They just adopt an alias when they join the guild. I have been reading a little bit of the Black Company lately, so that is fresh in my mind. The way the Black Company, although they're mercenaries, not thieves, but sometimes they get a little shady. But anyway, so what happens? We're going to say off screen because it's a Dolan story. The thief does follow the petition to the day, observes and collects as he collects a couple more bodies from the slums. Is one of them the tavern keeper's daughter? I want to follow back on where we left off. No, but so no. But the thief overhears that she's gravely ill and probably near death. All right, too bad. Another body is delivered to the morgue by a family. At this point, I'm just making up a story that this thief can come back with. Um, that evening, the mortician leaves with a cart, but veers off route and doesn't go to the cemetery. He instead heads into the slum and into a derelict building very close to the one that House Fogliando has purchased. Does the thief pursue further? Hell yes. Does she witness any sorcery? Hell no. She's able to follow. So, what does this mean? How am I going to interpret this? She's able to follow him, and this is all be things she's reporting back to Dolan. Follow the mortician into a kind of a basement or kind of a dungeon below the building and see he's prepping bodies for some kind of ritual, but doesn't really watch any kind of doesn't really see any magic ritual itself. Does she get any indication of magic whatsoever? Well, yes, but is what the oracle says. So what I'm going to interpret that as saying no specifics other than it looked like what she thinks a magic ritual would probably look like in her limited knowledge and experience of such things. So she at that point headed back to House Fogliando to ask for me to report in. Um, is she willing to accompany me? And this is just the oracle I'm asking. Would she accompany me into danger? Yes. So, um, I'm assuming if I refuse to let her come, she'd follow me anyway. I'm gonna say this NPC is now curious as about what's going on. So, so I did create some stats for her, and I'll share those at some other point so we can play. I think I'm gonna stop it right here. Uh, we'll get to one more uh, episode. That was pretty quick when I went through just what happened as far as the die rolls and stuff. But when we get into these actually two scenes that'll play out in the narrative part, there's quite a bit of dialogue and exposition going on. So that may take a little longer. than you would think relative to the quick description there of the game part of it. Uh, but then after that, we get into the final, the final confrontation with with the villain. So we'll stop here, and I'll save that for next time when we will wrap up. Let me turn it over now to the narrative part. Here we go. Like every aspect of life in the city of Ixark, indeed in any of the free cities, the afterlife was regulated by a guild, or at least the fate of the body afterlife was regulated by a guild. There were various smaller cemeteries throughout the city associated with specific families or temples, but the largest cemetery lay near the most inland corner of the city. Across from the main cemetery gate stood a drab structure that served as both the mortuary and the headquarters of the Morticians Guild. Dolen approached the solemn building and entered. The front room was a large parlor, clean and with comfortable furniture, arranged in several distinct sitting areas. It was almost welcoming. It was also empty. Dolen looked about for anyone. A few seconds later, someone glided into the room. He was a slender man of medium height. His hair was dark and neatly pulled back. He had an ivory complexion and large, deep eyes. He was garbed in dark, simple clothing. "Good afternoon," the man said. "May I help you?" "I am a courier from the merchant house, Foyando," Dolen led with his credentials. "May I speak with one of the Morticians?" "I am Pedro, a member of the Guild of Morticians," the man replied. "What is it you need? Has there been a loss?" There was something about the man that didn't sit right with Dolen. The way he paused before those last two words. There was a hint of perhaps eagerness there. Of course, a dead body meant income for a mortician, but it wasn't as if there was ever a shortage of business in a city as large as Ixark. Dolen decided to play this one close. "No deaths," he lied, but he immediately wrapped the deception in what was otherwise the truth. "Two of our house guards have fallen ill while attending to business near the slums. The illness has baffled our physician. It seems to be spreading in the slums, and some have even died there. I assume the bodies were brought here." The mortician gave an affirmative nod but said nothing. "Do you have any insights into this disease?" Dolen asked. "Unfortunately, I do not," Pedro replied. "We here only collect the dead and see to their remains." "You record the causes of death, correct? You have records?" Dolen pressed. The man seemed surprised that Dolen knew this, and also a bit uncomfortable. "We record the causes of death if it's known," the mortician said, "but those who live and die in the slums rarely have anyone to bear witness to that. You may examine the records if you wish, but it'll have to be some other time. I'm afraid we are quite busy today." The assertion of being busy stood in stark contrast to the silent stillness of the room, and the fact that no one else was here at all. Dolen removed the 5 remaining silver argents from his purse and stacked them on a nearby table. "For your time," he said. "I'm sorry to have intruded on your work on such a busy day. If you discover anything that might be of use to us, I'm sure House Fiondo would provide additional compensation." Dolen turned to leave. He was sure something was amiss with this Phaedro person. He was also sure that Phaedro could sense Dolen was on to him. He needed to get more information, but he needed to do it subtly. But now, the suspicious mortician knew his face. "I need to hire a thief," Dolen said to himself, and he was pretty sure he knew where he could find one. The next day, Dolen returned to the beach near the docks. For an hour or so, he looked around, hoping to catch a glimpse of the pickpocket he'd encountered before, but he had no luck. Switching tactics, he began to ask if anyone had seen a girl matching her description. He concocted a cover story that he had just arrived in port and was looking for his niece, who was supposed to meet him. Dolen figured even if no one saw her, she or someone else in the Thieves Guild would overhear and seek him out. Just before noon, as he sat in a tavern, he suddenly felt a sharp jab in his side. Before he had even fully registered, the girl lowered herself onto a stool next to him. "You're asking around about me?" the girl whispered. She had a knife suddenly pressed against his ribs. "Well, I didn't get your home address before," Dolen said. "You aren't seriously going to stab me right here in the open?" "I'll be be out the door before anyone knows, she replied. Fair enough, Dolen said. I'm not looking for trouble. I need to hire a thief, and you're the only guild member I know. You don't know me, the girl said. You're the only one I've met, Dolen corrected himself. I need someone tailed. I figured you could do it, or at least maybe get some credit with the guild for referring me to someone. Who's the mark? She asked. Listen, Dolen started. I'm sorry, what was your name? You can call me Thorn, she said. Thank you, he continued. Thorn. My name is Dolen. Anyway, I need a member of the Morticians Guild follower. Phaedro. He's a pale, slender fellow. It'll cost you more than 2 argents, she said. Last we met, that's all you had. Uncle. I had more than that, Dolen admitted. You what? She exclaimed, incredulous. Look, do you seriously want to act like I was the villain in that exchange? Dolen said with a laugh. You want the job or not? I'll give you 10 silver argents just to follow him the rest of the day and report back to me at House Foyando. Half up front, Thorn said. I'll give you 3, Dolen countered. That's 1 more than you got last time. You can have the rest when you report in. Plus, you'll have an in with one of the merchants' houses if you do well. The girl was silent for a moment, thinking it over. At last she agreed. Deal. That's a good girl, Dolen said, as he counted out 3 coins. You've always been my favorite niece. Thorn just scowled at him and scooped up the silver and left. Late in the evening, Hoyer found Dolen in his room at House Foyando. A young woman has called asking for you, he said. She claims to be your niece. I was unaware that your brother had sired any children. Nor was I until recently, Dolen said, and followed Hoyer towards the entry hall. He'd have to explain later, but first he wanted to see if he could get any sort of reaction out of the stoic majordomo. It didn't appear likely. Thorn stood just inside the front door. Her eyes were darting everywhere. Dolen hoped she was not encasing the house. She affected a smile at his approach. Good evening, Uncle, she said. Thorn, Dolen called, watching Hoyer out of the corner of his eye. The man was placid as ever. Have you eaten? Follow me to the kitchen. He put a hand on her shoulder to guide her in the right direction. He looked over his shoulder. Hoyer simply nodded and let them go. Where's my money? Thorn asked as they entered the kitchen. After you tell me what you learned, Dolen said. But I was serious about eating. Are you hungry? She shrugged. Dolen pointed to her chair and instructed her to make her report while he went about looking for food. He retrieved some bread and cheese, a couple of pears, and he filled a cup with fresh water. Sorry, no time to brew tea, he apologized. Thorn explained that she had gone to the mortuary straight from the docks and watched from the street. She saw Phaedro leave in the afternoon and tailed him into the slums, where he collected 2 more bodies. Dolen asked about the tavern keeper and his daughter. She wasn't one of the dead, Thorn replied, but I overheard people talking about them. I think it sounds like she's very near death. Thorn continued her account of the day. Phaedro had returned to the mortuary with the bodies. A 3rd body was delivered by a family later in the day. In the evening, he left with a cart drawn by a donkey. The cart was covered with a tarp. He headed towards the cemetery, but veered off the path and went back in the direction of the slums. However, instead of entering the slums, he went to a derelict building nearby. Where exactly was this building located? Dolen asked. Thorn gave a location that was just a few doors down from the building that had been purchased by House Foyando. She said she had waited a few minutes after he entered and snuck into the building. The ground floor was empty, but she followed the sounds of someone grunting and dragging something heavy to a stairway leading down to a cellar level. She paused. Well, what did you see? Dolen asked. Nothing good, she replied. He had the 3 bodies from earlier in the day. They were laid out on the ground. He was painting on them some kind of writing or symbols. Sorcery? Dolen asked. I can't say for sure, Thorn replied, but I imagine that's what some sort of magic ritual would look like. You see anything else? Dolen asked. No, she said. I snuck away and headed here to report in. Well, I suppose it was a frightful scene, Dolen said. I wasn't scared, Thorn snapped. I just ran out of time. My apologies, said Dolen. I suppose you've already seen enough things in life to toughen you up a little. She didn't respond to that. But finish eating and take whatever's left over with you, Dolen told her. You've done very well. He put 7 silver argents on the table. What now? She asked. I suppose I'll go see if that mortician is still there, Dolen said. What's this about, anyway? She asked. Why not just tell one of your noble friends? Because they just send me or someone like me to look into it further, Dolen explained. Plus, whatever he's up to might be the reason my brother is dead. Thorn nodded and said, I'll take you there to make sure you find the right place. And there you have it, part 4. We've got one more, part 5, coming up. What's going to happen when they confront this creepy mortician in the dungeon underneath the abandoned warehouse? Well, we'll have to find out here in a week or so with the next episode. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Um, the ways to contact me are in the show description. I'd love to hear a voice message. Either if you can find me on the Audio Dungeon Discord, you can go to my speak pipe. You can email me either a recording of a voice message or just text of a message, and I'll read it. However you want to get in touch with me, just love to hear feedback. Love to hear what people are thinking. So until I'm back next time, wherever you are out there, whatever's going on, take care of yourself and make someone happy today. Thanks for listening to the Arcane Alienist podcast. The music you're hearing is Come and Get It by Scott Holmes Music. The cover art is by Dave Bone. Be sure to check out his stuff at ironseer.com. You can leave me a message. I have my SpeakPipe account linked to the show description. You can also send me an email at arcane.alienist@gmail.com. Just embed a voice memo, or I'll just read the text of your email during a future episode. Once again, thanks so much for listening.